signature call or anything? Did you have any? And if you can give it to us in Chinese, that'd be even better.
88.7 Hit FM 调频88.7，这是北京最热门的歌曲。所以I forgot my whole line.
That was great.
这个是 Barry James 为你送上北京最热门的歌曲，为你送上下一首那首歌是来自 Alicia Keys, you know,
the record name comes
Hit
in
FM,
there.
Yeah.
White wine in the warm room hits a little differently than the red wine. I appreciate the white.
We're keeping it summery around here, even though it's nearly November, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like dry Rieslings, though. That's a very German type beer where my wife is from, the Moselle Valley. So the Riesling, they have some good dry Rieslings there. They're so inexpensive, just like a few bucks for a bottle, and they're really good.
Yeah, no, I've said this over and over again, but the dry Riesling, I think you actually might have gotten a couple bottles after our lunch.
We did.
In Utica. But it's definitely one of my, it's not too sweet. It's got a nice dry, I'm more of a dry wine kind of guy. And
even regular semi-sweet Riesling gets a little sweet.
That's right.
I mean, yeah, but dry Riesling we can do. It's got some flavor to it. I don't know.
Yeah, this is good.
Yeah, so we're here with Barry Sinnott, and we were going over the pronunciation of the last name. Is that correct, Sinnott?
That is correct. So
all right.
It's hard to pronounce. It's not the way it looks intuitively, but it's...
We want to make more of it.
That was the question, and we've heard it many different times. This is when you go to say it properly for a podcast, you're like, Sinnott.
You start second guessing yourself.
Well, it's an O at the end. It's Sinnott, so you think it's Sinnott, but that's not how it's spelled. It's an Irish name, and people in Ireland kind of know how to pronounce it. But in America, people pronounce it a little bit differently.
We kind of fumble through it.
Okay.
Right.
All right. I feel good about it. We've had it right this whole time. I just wanted to make sure.
Much appreciated.
You know, because I feel like once you hear something so long, like, all right, we're just going to let it go that way in life, you know. But it's the Irish background. Fine. Right. Great.
Wait till your fourth bottle of dry Riesling. You'll be pronouncing it all
I'll
funny.
have the accent going. I tend to do that for some reason when I get really drunk around March 17th, which my birthday is March 18th. So there's a reason. There's not only that's not the only reason why I've been.
There's a lot going on in March
drunk a couple times over the last.
So that's a 48-hour celebration.
Yes, exactly. So
so
when you're around others with an accent, you sometimes attempt to pick it up. And luckily, I haven't found any videos of me attempting that, but I'm not proud of it. It's just something that happens.
Well, the name Sinnott is Irish, and my grandfather would be very proud because he would, have a couple drinks every once in a while. And my mother's from Taiwan, so she's Taiwanese. I call myself Taiwanese. My grandfather would proudly call his grandkids Chirish because, Chinese and Irish. We're not really Chinese, but I thought it was kind of cute, so I use that once in a while.
So I guess that's a good place to start. 12 years over in China and Taiwan at one point in your life. I knew you were over there. I didn't realize it was like
that's a good
piece of the life over there. So your mother originally from Taiwan.
Yeah, my mom's from Taiwan, but we kind of grew up here in South Utica. I mean, not here. We're in Rome, obviously. But in South Utica, I grew up kind of with everybody else playing Little League Baseball, and I didn't speak any kind of Taiwanese or Chinese at all growing up. But in college, I was like, well, I have to learn a language, so why not choose Chinese? And I think it was a good choice. I ended up moving to Taiwan after college, and I did 2 years of teaching English, teaching really little kids, kindergarten. And that's really good. If you haven't done that, that's something that's really, it'll test your patience and something that's very, very good.
I have not done that.
You've never taught kindergarten, okay. But I taught kids English, and I was studying Chinese. Now, Taiwanese also has their own language, which is the native language of my mother, but Chinese is much more widely spoken in the world. After a couple years of being in Taiwan, I was like, well, let me go back to China, because I was actually in China for junior year for one semester. And China back then, it was the late 90s, was kind of exploding with growth, and things were really happening. And I was like, let me go back there. I want to really kind of be a part of China. So in 2003, I moved from Taiwan to China, and I ended up working there for a little while. And again, China was just exploding, very open to the West, very different than it is right now, I feel. Things are just getting a little bit more kind of like, tighter now with everything. Mm-hmm. But back then, it was really interesting. And initially, I worked at, kind of like what we're doing here, I worked for a radio station.
I saw a little music, also radio tidbit in some profiles I came across. So.
Fortunately, I met some people, and I applied for a job with Virgin Radio. And I had no real experience being a host or a DJ. And like, but you know music. And I was like, well, yeah, I know music. And like, well, you want to be a host? I'm like, sure, why not? Let me give it a shot. And I ended up being on the air for Virgin Radio. It was a radio station called Hit FM, and it was in Beijing. And they were in preparation for the Olympics coming in 2008. So they were really trying to bring Western music over to China. And it was great. I mean, I had a show. I would say my lines kind of one time in English, one time in Chinese, because I'm not that quick. So I could kind of say it twice, and it would kind of work out. And it became a great show, and I really enjoyed it, and gave me a lot of good experience. And I did that for a couple of years.
Did you have a radio name? I feel like everybody has that.
So
Go-to.
it's a little disappointing, but back then, wow.
Kind of like the Thirsty Owl story. Yeah. You want it to be good.
So I wanted to go with the bear because that's kind of what my buddies called me, growing up. Barry obviously shortens the bear pretty quickly.
Sure.
And the Chinese were like, nah, it's a little kind of like rough. It's kind of a rough animal. I'm like, no, you're not going to be the bear. So I was like, well, my name's Barry James, and they're huge NBA fans. Yao Ming had just kind of come into the league, and LeBron James was the #1 pick coming into the NBA that year. So I was like, well, how about my middle name, which is James, Barry James? And they're like, yeah, perfect. You're Barry James. So it's my name, but it worked out,
My radio name is actually my name.
Now that I know what to look up, though, we got to see if there's any is there anything out on the interweb that Morgan can do a quick pickup on?
There used to be. If you search for Barry James Hit FM, there might be a couple things out
Hit
there.
FM, all right.
But it's Hit FM Beijing or Hit FM China.
Beating up the Google right now.
It was such a long time ago, though, that it's almost pre-internet, I guess. That we did this back in 2003 and 2004.
Sometimes that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
When a lot of your history was before the internet.
Right. I guess that's the advantage of the older generation. You get these things you look back on even now from my early Facebook when I had to remove. I'm like, what was I doing?
How about MySpace?
MySpace. I
Like Twitter now. Like these kids are getting drafted. Like they're roasting them for what they said on Twitter and when they were 15. I'm like, I'm glad that wasn't around.
That's true.
Because
Yeah. Well,
you think it's funny or a joke, but wildly inappropriate. But at that age, you don't even know what you're doing.
That's true.
You can barely tie your shoes.
I'm glad my MySpace account is defunct. That's probably
it just does not exist anymore.
I miss Tom, my first friend on MySpace.
Got that.
Remember that guy?
That's right.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, the actual creator, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oy. Good times.
So fast forward to 2005, the radio station, I ended up leaving that, and I wasn't ready to come home to Utica to work in the family business, which is Bank of Utica. I knew I was going to get there at some point, but I was like, well, look, let me try to use my experience in China. I've really been studying Chinese for so long. I kind of want to be the guy in China for the Mohawk Valley. So I ended up setting up a company called Mayflower Trade, and I ended up doing trade between China and, call it, upstate New York, for quite a while. And actually, the company still exists today. I don't really do much to push it forward, but I have 4 very stable clients, and the business is still running. I do it at night. So this whole work from home thing I was doing kind of like much earlier than the work from home thing started. And it still works out. And it really helped me a lot with my bank career because I had my own little company. I had my own cash flow problems. I had to go to my a bank and apply for loans and just kind of learn how all the financials fit together. And it's great. So now when I sit across the table from customers, I kind of know what they're talking about if they have some issues and stuff.
You've been in that chair before.
Been in that chair. Still in it today, actually, a little bit. So.
Oh, cool. So when you're over there, and Brad and I were talking before about this, but and you have a lot of similarities with Brad here, being multi-generational and
4th generation, right? 4th.
I'm 4th. Yeah.
and just like, all right, even in the back of your mind, that's probably what you're gonna end up doing. But
Right.
let me do some other adventures just to see what else is out there. But worst comes to worst, it's great background.
Right.
I can bring those skills back to the Bank of Utica.
Yeah. Well, I think for me too, number one, I had to just on my own get a job, right? If things
Right.
go bad, you've got to be able to rely on yourself. So I
Sure.
went to China. I met some people there. I got a job. I was very proud that I could find a job. And the second thing was, can I start my own company? And I was able to kind of do that. And of course, it's not the bank. It's a very, very small company. But having that experience just really helps me with confidence going down the road with everything else that's going on. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was actually, I didn't know about that. Again, kind of doing some of the research. I know you've done some of the things on your own, but that's kind of a cool, working with China. And do you see the similarities coming into the small financial, because Bank of Utica, though big, is you only have one spot.
Right. We're one branch.
Famous for that. I mean,
Yeah.
worldwide
that
famous
might be
for
the
that.
better angle.
I mean, when you bring up Bank of Utica to anyone, wherever you are, they're like, wow, one
It's kind
branch.
of the secret to our success, as I talk about this on this public podcast. But
But every bank has done the complete opposite. They all go
Right.
as many branches as they can and
Right.
trying to do the scalable thing.
we had moments in our history where we thought it's time for us to start branching out. But by having the one branch, and we have between 45 and 50 employees, our overhead is much lower than a bank our size. Our bank today is about $1.3 billion in assets. A bank roughly that size, $1.3 billion in assets, might usually have 200 plus employees. It maybe has 10, 15, 20 branches. So we just don't have the overhead that other people have, but we also don't have the convenience. So throughout our history, what we've had to do is we've had to really raise the rates on our deposit rates. So historically, we may not have the best rate for every single account across the board, but historically we've been the bank that kind of drives rates, around here the last 5-6 decades or so. And it's worked out for us.
So you do that to retain and lure in new customers.
Right.
as opposed to just brick and mortar.
Right, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, if you don't have kind of that higher rate, what's the incentive for somebody from Rome, let's just say,
Right.
to drive the 20 minutes it takes to get to downtown Utica and open an account? You've just got to have that higher rate. And we don't open accounts for anybody outside of the area. We only open accounts for people here in the Mohawk Valley. Well, there's 4 counties we deal with, so Oneida, Herkimer, Madison, and a little bit of Otsego.
All right.
So you know what the next question is.
You want it?
I mean,
You take it.
is it possible for another branch? I mean, is that like in the constitution of the Bank of Utica, or is anything on the table?
No, when I was in college, I was like, oh, what a bummer. We don't have other branches. Wouldn't it be cool to have a branch in New Hartford and a branch in Rome and a branch here? But that's, like I said, that's kind of the way the bank operates. And there's so many more things that are online now. We have our own mobile banking app, of course, remote deposit capture. All these things can be done with your phone. And the bigger banks have more high-powered stuff, but we're with a banking software company called Fiserv. They're kind of like the Microsoft for banks, and they're able to give us a lot of the bells and whistles that the bigger banks have. So little community banks like us can kind of compete. So no, there is no movement for that. We do love seeing people. We're very people-oriented. My favorite thing to do is to sit in the bank lobby there and have customers that are looking to do business loans come in and sit with me. We sit around this table on the first floor there with a couple other people from the bank, and we get to know them, and we just have face-to-face conversations. So I absolutely appreciate that and love that. But it's not, you don't have to come to the bank every single day to do your banking, right? You can do everything, a lot of stuff you can do on your phone right now.
You can.
There really is no incentive to kind of open up another branch, and we're going to happily kind of carry on this road. I think.
Does that apply to the vending side too? Is that the right word? The vending or the where you get cash out of?
Oh, ATMs.
ATMs?
Yeah, ATMs.
Like vending machines. How do you feel about crackers? Yeah, and chips.
I don't want to talk about it. All right, but no, I guess
the
where
old
I'm going
ATM.
with that is the ATM on side of things. Are those throughout?
We got a cool product we signed up with Fiserv. It's called the Allpoint Network. And we signed up for that maybe 10 years ago, and it's got 50,000 plus ATMs.
Okay,
across
so it's a
America.
share kind of mechanism. So if I go to RCC, you could probably put
Yeah,
in the
there's
Bank of Utica card.
At least 2 or 3 in Rome. I think Kingpin Lanes has one, a couple others. There's 1 or 2 in New Hartford, 1 in Clinton. There's like every street corner around in New York, you're just 3 blocks away from one. So every
Gotcha.
Frankfurt's got one, Herkimer's got one. So
Gotcha.
It's great for us. It's very convenient. That way, if you got to pull out your cash, you can take your Bank of Utica debit card.
You just have to be
bam.
tied into their network. It doesn't even have to be
Right.
okay.
Only in America, but there's a couple other countries it works in, but it's basically just an American network. So
That makes sense.
yeah.
And if you haven't been to the Bank of Utica, it's amazing.
It is really cool.
We were lucky enough to get
Thank
a
you.
tour.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive.
And my favorite part was the indoor pool. And the movie theater.
we're kidding, of course.
We're kidding. Yeah.
But
It is. I wouldn't. That place was magnificent. They did a great job with this project.
Thank you.
I couldn't believe how beautiful that place was.
Yeah, it
well
was.
done.
The last time we did a large scale building renovation project was 1970 to 1972. My dad was just starting his career there, and we acquired the building that's right next to the bigger building we have, which is technically 224 Genesee Street. But we were so conservative. If you looked at our balance sheet from 2010 to 2019. The fixed assets looked like kind of a nice house in Rome or in Utica. Like it was just laughable, like how low our fixed assets were.
Right.
But it was time. I mean, we had just stuff leaking over. My daddy's like, yeah, this isn't good. We gotta get some stuff done here. So it started in 2013 with this siding project, and it spiraled into really reconstructing the whole complex. And it's because we're here to stay. We're going to be here for a long, long time. We're independently controlled. We don't have any plans to change that. And the bank put a ton of money in to really make the building in tip-top shape. And we finished, luckily for us, in 2019, 1 year before the pandemic. Because if it was during the pandemic, it probably would have been, double the cost? I mean,
that's
who knows?
right.
With inflation
Quadruple the timeline. And,
Yeah,
I
right.
mean,
Exactly.
No, I mean, if you're going to stay, do it up. And you guys did a great job. So well
Well,
done.
it was
beautiful.
awesome because I think it was a good mix of keeping the history there because there's a lot of cool features in that,
Oh, yeah.
bank, but still upgrading a lot, whether it's structural or it looks incredible.
Yeah, we were grandfathered in for a few things. For example, we had this old cage elevator, and while it's not technically a cage, you can't stick your fingers through and get them chopped off if you're going up anymore.
Yeah, that's never good. That's not a good selling point. Yeah.
But we were able to.
You didn't make your loan payment? Why don't you take a ride in this elevator?
Right. But there's glass on it now, so the look is still this caged elevator look, which is pretty cool. And we have an open staircase that goes from our lobby, our first floor where the tellers are, to the second floor, and that was grandfathered in because it's a beautiful, kind of magnificent staircase. And there's a lot of old features and traits like that we were able to keep. We tried really hard to keep whatever we can. Some stuff was just not salvageable though, and you just have to go new once in a while. But yeah, I invite anybody to come in and check it out. It's definitely there's a lot of local history going on right in our lobby there.
And so you're at that bank, one location every day. Your father, I noticed, is in there most of the time still, right? Yeah.
Very old school. He's the president and CEO, and he's there every morning. He started kind of during the pandemic, going home maybe in the early afternoon or so. But it's so old school. He's right there in the lobby, so anybody who's walking in the lobby can walk right up and talk to him. There's no kind of room with a guard dog secretary to be like, hey, what's going on here? You can walk right up to him.
And you can't miss him either with his wardrobes.
Yeah, he's got those neon green and neon blue
suits.
Love
the
in the
play, though.
summertime. Right.
The confidence of
I don't have that.
I love
it.
No,
I don't want to try to pull that off. So, but no, you can walk right up to him, and he will be like, "Well, what are you doing here?" And he'll get you out of his desk pretty quickly. But anybody can walk right up to him and talk to him, and that's a very old school way that bankers used to be. The president was right on the floor there, dealing with all the problems and the people, and that's how my dad insists on being. So.
And that's definitely a lost art these days. We've come up in a couple conversations, whether it's with other people that used to be in Rome Savings Bank or some of those other stuff, where not necessarily deals happening on napkins anymore or straws, but to still have most of that feel where you can go in and talk to the owner and try to make something happen.
Right. On straws?
Yeah.
How small is this deal?
So, no, here's my controller. My controller would always have a pen, and then he would come back to his desk with notes. And that's the only thing, the straw wrappers.
Oh, wow.
So the straw wrappers.
His notes.
Some length of one of those. Though.
Yeah. So you're using your napkin during, but how often are, so
Sure.
he on his desk, I was really young, see these notes that he would just remember to, whether it was call someone back or reach back on something that would happen. Those napkin deals where you're sitting down with the bankers one-on-one, you didn't have to go to a regional or go to whatever to make something approved.
In the land of acquisitions and mergers now.
You're about as close as it gets to something like that, sitting down, and we'll have to get to the lunches, but no, I still really appreciate the feel of talking to who's actually operating behind the scenes, and I think that's really neat.
That's one of the things that banks used to have. There used to be a lot of community banks. Everybody kind of knew each other. We never did too much business up in Rome, but my dad, of course, knew Charlie Sprock, and I never met Charlie, but he has such a great reputation. People I'm meeting in Rome nowadays, as I'm spending a little bit more time in Rome, it's like, oh, Rome Savings was so great and Charlie Sprock was so great. You go in, there's, like you said, a handshake deal and, written on a napkin. And that's something that's really important to the community. When you're a little business getting started out, you need that kind of support and you need that kind of like one-on-one personal touch. And, we still have, there's a couple banks out there that have it, but we're definitely a part of that whole thing. And I appreciate the same thing. It's like, I love talking to people that are looking to do, something with their own business and being able to talk to the people that are in charge of it. Same thing with you guys, actually. I really appreciate being able, what you guys are doing here for the community. It's a huge, huge thing, I think. And I'm pushing that sentinel every chance I get.
I appreciate. We really appreciate the support, and it's working. The having that kind of the name behind what we're doing has been a huge build, and the growth has been well worthwhile. So
it's the
bank's been a great partner too.
With people like you guys, as opposed to just some black hole where you're trying to contact someone. It's like, who knows what's going on, So it's very, very two peas in a pod, I would say.
Yeah, that open door policy is massive. Yeah. When someone's having a problem, they can come right to my office or to your office and say, "Well, it buck stops here. Let's sit down and have the conversation." And it's nice to have that, and then the employees appreciate that too.
Yep.
It doesn't put them into a tough situation.
You got their backs, or you tell them what you feel. It is right here. There's no, I got to wait for this guy to get back to me out in California. It's not. There's none of that here.
Yeah. So I alluded to the lunches. We're going to our first lunch with Tom and Barry.
Cut,
and we can edit any part here, but they are legendary. I think they are. Everybody knows that you've somewhat made it when you've been to a lunch with Barry and Tom. How did those come about? Where did that start?
It's very interesting because you hear about this little rivalry between Utica and Rome once. Well, not a rivalry, but it's like sometimes the Uticans don't really spend too much time in Rome and vice versa. But my grandfather was very, very close friends later in life with Pat DeStito. And Pat ran the Savoy, and they were such good buddies. And then at some point, this wasn't something the bank did for its whole history, but I think in the 60s or maybe the 70s, my grandfather ended up going out to lunch with at the Savoy with one of their bigger customers. And, of course, Pat was there. And they ended up staying, instead of for like an hour or two, they stayed for like 3 or 4 hours. And he's like, "This is great. We should do this again next week." So that's kind of how the whole thing got started with my grandfather, Roger Sinnott. And then Pat would spend a lot of time at the table. So you had, the customer, You had the bank and you had the Savoy, who was kind of right there. And that's kind of how the whole thing got started. And that just carried off. And back then in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, business lunch was a little bit more popular, right?
Sure.
They go to the Savoy, and the Savoy was not packed, but like a lot of tables were full. If you go to lunch today, it's kind of like we're like the only people kind of in the room sometimes. And it's like, okay, who's having a 3 or 4 hour business lunch or over drinks, over wine and stuff? It's a little bit unusual. But really, the credit to that, really, the bank in Rome's a big part of that. The Savoy was the place. My grandfather and my dad took people to lunch once a week for probably 30 or 40 years, just the Savoy. And of course, Chris carried on that tradition. Chris would also, this is Christopher's father, Chris, would sit at the table, with my dad and the customers. And the bank would also not just bring customers, but also politicians. We go once a year with the mayor, once a year with the county executive, once a year with the state senator, once a year with the congressman, so we bring the political people. And it was a really good kind of networking ability. So for years, my dad said, the bank, my grandfather and him did their part to try to bring the two communities together. And the Savoy was such a great restaurant. We're, of course, sad it's not here anymore. But that was just such a great place to kind of like have a lunch and do some of this business. And yeah, as Wes, you talked, there's some drinking involved at lunch. It's not, there's not a bunch of teteetotalers that go there and kind of.
There really isn't. But I told my wife that we were going to have lunch with y'all, and I think, oh boy, were her first words. I'll pick up the kids that day. But I heard performances out of you all. I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard we'd asked for dinner menus before at the Savoy. I mean, Chris was telling me some whispers that you guys put on some good performances.
They always had a chef there, and they could definitely have the full menu at the Savoy.
You did the lunch, and well, it's time for dinner again.
Occasionally, people would roll it into dinner, and my dad would be so happy if somehow a lunch went until like 8, 9, 10 p.m., which we don't really do that much anymore. But
just like every other one.
Well, but I think there's so much to those. I mean, obviously it's fun, but getting to know somebody, and especially in this kind of environment, just having a drink
past that first level, right?
Yeah, getting past that first level, and there's so much to that. Even when I go to conferences, the conference is great, but it's the after drinks where you kind of get into the weeds a little bit more.
Absolutely.
You learn about personality because we run into people all the time in professional settings. And some of them that's not even them. They just know they have to hold this, And when we had Alicia on, it was the same way. I thought she was just, she's badass, but then she has a soft, just to see that, it's almost like relatable in a way when you kind of strike a chord there. And
Alicia's great. She's one of our regular lunch partners.
Yeah,
so she'll go with us once a year.
I think there's a lot said there, and you kind of find these synergies and commonalities that are just tack on. You just never know where something's going to go.
Yeah, with lunch, it was kind of funny. I had this one situation where I go to I used to say half the lunches, now it's maybe 3/4 of the lunches, because I've actually got to be in the bank, doing some stuff. Quite a bit, actually, because the work doesn't go away; it just kind of builds up.
Oh man, I thought it would just vanish if you're at lunch. That's not how it works,
right?
That's
so
terrible.
Our examiners are there; they come all the time, and we're on a once every 18-month schedule. We have a great relationship with the examiners; it goes very, very well with them. They bring a lot of them over here. And this one guy was here, the examiner in charge, and he's read through our policies. And I said, "Oh, Andre, it's kind of unusual. I'm actually got to go to lunch and you've been here they're here for 6 weeks. This is your 4th week. It's like my 4th lunch in a row. So I'm going to be out of the bank the whole Wednesday afternoon. I'm sorry. I really feel bad. Because normally they want to talk to me. I'm the main guy they talk to. There's lots of people at the bank, but the examiners spend half their time or more with me. I'm so sorry, Andre, I can't make it." And he goes, no, Barry. He's like, "I read your policy. I understand. This is how you guys do business. You go to lunch with the community leaders. You go to lunch with your most important customers, with the marketing people, the media people." So he's like, you should go. You should go to all the lunches. And I said, "Okay.
All right.
I'm out of here, Andre."
Yeah, so I can support that decision.
Now, if you can tell my wife that'd be great.
Yeah.
It's work.
Yeah.
It is
But
work.
Brett, as you were saying, when you just break bread with somebody, because I go to a lot of these banking conferences or some trainings and stuff, and you have the classes, right? But then afterwards, you're kind of at the bar for happy hour. That's really where you learn a lot of stuff about people.
Yeah.
And it's just an old-fashioned way to do business.
Yeah.
And I hope it never goes away.
Yeah, and there's something about when we had Sevneet Singh, when we had lunch with him, he mentioned the YPO, and a lot of good YPOs, what they do is they want you to be vulnerable. And to open up and to feel comfortable opening up. And I feel like that's kind of where you really start making business and making things happen. When you understand where the other one is coming from, you find business partners that way. You find out a lot more than the face value. And I fully support that. And obviously I love cocktailing too. So I mean, why not? Even our wives do call us the Drink Your Face Off podcast. This is work, people. This is part of the gig.
Yeah.
This is how we
That's the censored version too.
Well, I was going to ask.
Was there a signature call or anything? Did you have any? And if you
was
can give
just
it to us
say,
in Chinese, that'd be even better.
88.7 Hit FM 调频88点7，这是北京最热门的歌曲。所以I forgot my whole line.
That was great.
这个是 Barry James 为你送上北京最热门的歌曲，为你送上下一首那首歌是来自 Alicia Keys. You know,
the record name comes
Hit
in there.
FM. Yeah. So.
I think he just made fun of you in there.
I think he's calling us names.
Google Translate will be able to run that through.
Can we translate this
It's
quickly?
kind of brutal. I don't really say it properly.
That's amazing. Yeah. I was gonna say if there was any on camera or off camera stories from China and Taiwan, spending 12 years there, and that age, any fun tidbits from that.
It's a
journey?
different world. You have this whole concept of like kind of these foreigners, whether they're Americans or European or South Americans or whatever, going there. And it's very different from the world they're in. So you have this whole foreign culture there, and people really let their hair down. They really kind of, the bars, for example, in Taiwan and China back then would basically go until all hours of the night. The younger people, it's the people in the, studying, the students in their 20s or so before you had a family, were going out really hard in these big cities. There are even some bars that kind of got started like at 4 or 5 a.m. They would kind of go up until 8 or 9 a.m. And I was really, going to those after hours places too much. But there's just, people really were like, hey, I'm not home. I can behave kind of a different way. And some people really took it to a different level.
They took advantage.
And they took advantage of it.
Right.
But then also for me, like I spent so much time learning. When I was in Taiwan, I spent time with my family. So I was really more interested in the culture and, really getting to know people. So I have very close friends who are Chinese because I was working with them every day, kind of like at Bank of Utica. They were the guys next to me, and one of them actually is still with my Mayflower Trade Company right now, and we're very, very close. So the people in China really, they're just doing what we're trying to do here. They're just trying to make money and have fun and, have a good time and stuff. And, not really I've got one kind of crazy story that just popped into mind. So when we were with Virgin Radio, there was a Chinese car company called Vitz, Weidze, I think it was like VITZ or something like that. And they had all the media from Beijing come in. They took us to a racetrack, and they had professional race car drivers train us, the media, on how to drive around the track. So they would show us, you take this curve this way, you kind of like drift here, not drift, but you kind of like give it a little bit of off the gas, then you gun it right here. And I was looking around. I was 24, 25 at the time. I'm like, man, these guys are old. I'm gonna dust these guys like in this race. So it wasn't a race with all of us at the same time. It was a time trial. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I did my race, and I felt I did okay. But I'm fairly, I'm not gonna go crazy or anything like that. And then some of these people were just taking it so hard, and these guys had no business racing a car. So one guy in the racetrack, he just spins around, bam, he crushes the front of the hood. It's all crumpled up. So he's driving back, and the wheels are like, burning through the fender. And I was like, this is horrible. And another guy just tore into like the parked cars where he couldn't brake in time, and he just rear-ended one of the other cars. And the guy's like, hey, it's been great having everybody, but we got to let y'all go. We can't really ruin any more cars.
You've hit your allotment of damage.
Right. And back then I didn't have a license, and I was with my boss. It's that's fine, just drive. So, and I had to drive from our studio like all the way out there in these cars. It was just so that's kind of a crazy story. There's a lot of little things like that kind of popped up. So,
I guess it's just funny when we're going to those cars because crashing some of those. I mean, what kind of cars were they? What kind of cars were they driving?
Just simple little cars. Like a Vitz is similar to like maybe a Nissan Sentra or a Toyota Corolla.
Okay.
Kind of small compact cars, not a sports.
I was
car.
going to say we're just going to total a couple Ferraris for the fun of it.
It's no big deal, right?
They're pretty cheap. Yeah.
Yeah. Goodness.
Covered that.
This is a good deal with the wine, by the way. This really makes it a little different than other podcasts. I appreciate this whole.
Well, there's more. So speaking of which, I'm getting a little low.
Yeah, I was going to say, why don't we do a little top here, Wesser?
All right.
Well, and then that's really kind of the gist of what we were going for. We obviously talk business, but
Thank you.
Oh yeah, backhand. Yeah, this is look at that skill, and we can open up the other bottle over there too if we need to. No, we never really we prep a little bit. I mean, just little tidbits, but really it's just
shooting the breeze.
Just shooting the breeze. It's like if we had a bar top right here, that's kind of the goal, right? Yeah. You go on TV and everything's very structured. Even when we interview, there's so many structures to that. We really just a little finding out about China and Taiwan, like that's like more personal.
I didn't
stories.
think I was gonna get a Chinese radio call here.
Yeah, you can't predict that opening.
Yeah, that's not going to be on the sheet.
We might even have to do another run through that to see if I can get.
Yeah, because I screwed up the whole line there, but I haven't done it in probably 20 years. So but
You didn't rehearse this morning in the mirror just in case it came up.
Just in case it came up.
Here we go. I know
Chinese
Brad's going to
poem.
ask me about this.
Yeah. No. No, since you're in the banking world, obviously crypto is
Here we
kind of
go,
the thing.
crypto. I could feel it.
I had to at least. I appreciate that because no one really knows. But I love to hear. You take like 10 opinions and try to form your own. And with your background in all over the world and obviously in the weeds in the banking industry, what do you see? Are you guys active in that? In any
Bank
of
of
your...
Utica is not active in crypto. It's kind of beyond what we can understand. And personally, it's beyond a little bit about what I can understand. And for years, I felt really guilty. A lot of my friends are like, "Oh, you don't have crypto? Like, what's wrong with you?" And I was like, oh, "Sorry,
You're missing out on the crypto train, Barry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Barry
I feel like some of
James.
these guys. One of my buddies bought a Bitcoin like in 2000, I don't know, 15 or 14 for $25. And he sold it a couple years later for $2,000. Right?
Thinking he killed it. Thinking he killed it.
Right,
He's like,
That's a
yeah,
pretty good
Barry.
return. Isn't it worth what? It's 80. I don't know how much it's worth, but it's ridiculous money.
What's
right
it, like
now,
30
right?
now or something around there?
I mean, if you had that kind of return on any,
Yeah.
you would be like,
Right.
of course,
Right.
right. But then
Right. So I always
but it
felt
was up there for like big for a while.
60 got up to 60 or even
60,000,
higher,
yeah.
So I felt always kind of guilty that I never really spent the time to understand crypto. There's this book that came out 10 years ago, The Age of Cryptocurrency, and I never read it. And all my buddies were like, "Oh yeah, you're missing out." But I recently finished up. It's a banking school that's been around for decades. It's called the Stonier Graduate School of Banking, and right now it's held at Wharton. So I was down in Penn for there's 3 semesters basically. And it's where I met a lot of these guys. We were just kind of talking about people at the bar, and you're really learning about what other banks are doing. This is kind of like people call it between 30 and 50 years old who are going to be running banks like down the road.
Yeah.
And so I took the crypto class, and there's this very like charming, charismatic guy from Tennessee who was a teacher, that Southern drawl, and he was so smart. This guy just knew so much about stuff, and he was teaching everybody crypto. And he was like, "All right, so here we are with like 125 bankers." And he's like, "All right, how many of all y'all have crypto?" And I was like, "Oh, great. Here I'm the only loser in the room that doesn't have crypto." There's like 5 guys out of 125. So even though bankers are gamblers when they have to like make a loan or so, I felt some camaraderie there. I'm like, "Hey, look, I'm not the only guy without crypto." And a lot of the guys I talked to, they're like me. I don't have time to understand it. And the little bit of time I spend into it, I just don't get it. Like, I don't understand why this might, this could take off someday. So I'm sorry that's a kind of a disappointing answer to be like, no, I can't shed any
but that's really an answer.
That's a great answer.
You just you it's like building a portfolio, right? You limit your risk. You might dabble a little bit, and I think that's how I'm viewing crypto right now. I feel like I do feel FOMO if I don't figure out a little bit. I mined Ethereum for a little while until I went to proof of work, and I do feel like it's one of those things where you're like, well, if it's not a huge point, I'll put in what it's like gambling, right? You go to the casino, you take what you're willing to lose, and if you hit, great. If not, so what?
Right. It's speculative at this point, but the concept of it, right? A decentralized currency, the blockchain, it all kind of makes sense to me. So I think it's here to stay.
That's where I was going to go next.
That part
I think it's here to stay.
I can buy, but is it a currency? Well, I can't buy anything and really still can't use it. So that one kind of struggles with it,
I was at this pizza shop, Nina's downtown, and this guy walks in off the thruway. He's like, "Oh, I heard there was a crypto ATM here." I was like, I don't think so. So I asked Nina. She's like, "No." So you can't just walk into a store in Utica that I know of and, pay with crypto. You could at Ocean Blue. Right. But I've only taken a handful of them over the years.
So. Yeah, well, so the bigger story was actually concentrating on blockchain because the concept of it makes sense to me, especially when it comes to mortgages and some of these things that it's so cumbersome. Mm-hmm. It just takes so many things to document everything, and just to have a decentralized way of everybody being on the same page, that does make sense to me.
Yeah.
And whether it's, whatever a currency comes out later, but the process of it is really genius, and at some point that probably will change the world.
Right.
So I didn't know. Yeah. So blockchain is separate from it being a dollar or something like that. But the concept of blockchain.
Blockchain also, there was this thought for all the many crypto users that it's totally anonymous, and that's why there's a host of bad actors, whether they're doing drug dealing or human trafficking or whatever, that were involved with that. With crypto. But there's a great article that came out in Wired magazine a year or two ago, and it's like a very long article. I mean, most people don't have the patience, including me, to read anything over like one page. This is like
We're working on that.
We
Don't
just
even
talked
get
about
me going on that. Very well. That's another podcast. Another time.
But this Wired magazine article is they actually had a bunch of guys in the FBI, I don't think CIA, but basically cracking this whole kind of child sex trafficking thing. So it is somewhat traceable if you can figure out the little switches and stuff. So that to me is important, because working for a bank, we're highly regulated. We follow the law, and we want people to do the same thing.
Yeah, you don't want to leave your door open for
right.
Oh,
and I love the things going, because I relate it to cash. I mean, you pay something in cash. How do you necessarily
an
find
anonymous
parts
form.
of it? I mean, maybe on the bigger transactions like mortgages and stuff, I see how, but in, cash is still, whether it's the bad apples of drugs and sex trafficking, cash is still hard to trace.
I still use cash. If it's a small purchase, I use cash, and I still like cash, and I'm glad America does use cash. And it's not about being anonymous, but at the same time, in China, starting about 10 years ago, and I was going there regularly up until 2019. So they have an app called Wechat, and Wechat, the simplest thing that is closest to what we have is called WhatsApp, which I'm sure a lot of people use. But it's not just WhatsApp; it's also Wechat takes the place of basically Facebook because you post everything on there, all your kind of social, media posts. They don't really use email anymore, so texting, and also your wallet. Everything is done with WeChat, and I would say probably 95 to 98% of the people in Shanghai use WeChat. So if you're in Starbucks, you pop up a QR code, bam, you zap it, you pay. If there's a beggar on the street, he holds up a QR code, you scan it, and you give him money. So cash is really...
That's what X wants to do, right? They want to go all cash with their...
Cashless?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Twitter.
It's scary. I mean, but then China has basically got a record. I mean, WeChat, let's not say the government of China, but WeChat has a record of every single transaction you've ever done anywhere you've gone. And if you pull out cash, you're kind of ostracized. You're like, cash? Really? Like, you use cash? Like, I can't deal with that. So I lost my WeChat account because I'm no longer kind of a resident of China. So I can't use my WeChat account the last time I was there, which was just a few months ago. So I had to use cash, but there's no change. So I had to go to the bank and just get wads of change. So I had to pay exact cash for every single thing I was doing in China. It was quite a burden. I felt like a second-class citizen.
That's a bit cumbersome.
Yeah. I hope we don't go that route. I really like how we have different abilities to pay for different things here in the States.
So there's your Bitcoin.
Yeah, no,
or crypto. I shouldn't nail it into Bitcoin, but
it's one of those. It will be always ongoing, and it's kind of like you're still in the mid. Sorry, let's call it late '80s of internet. It's like people. It's kind of coming around, right? It's like, but it hasn't hit its big moment. It's we've seen some clips when email. Like the radio stations freaking out about what is it's just like I still think it has that opportunity to be the next big thing. Kind of like maybe AI takes its glory for now as internet kind of like step in our lifespan, and that's just the way I think I'm going to have FOMO not being part of it in a small sense, but.
Fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. He's acronym man. My biggest drawback where I get scared with crypto is just I don't feel like the governments are going to let it do its thing. They like the power. They like having control of the currency. They like fiat currency. Why would they let this thing run amok on their own and let it get so powerful that their currency is diminished?
As an extension of the banking system, I'm kind of with the government on that. I don't want the U.S. dollar to get
I just don't think
here,
that they're going to let that happen. They're say, okay, this is a great idea, or it might be a great idea, but we're squashing it.
Yeah.
That's where I think there's a ceiling on it. But what the hell do I know?
Yeah.
To be smart though, we really should. I go to those when I go to the Fiserv IT conferences. I go to the crypto classes. I go to these.
Good.
There's lots of webinars and stuff out there, and we've got some people at the bank that are looking at this because we can't just be left in the dust. I mean, we have to know.
You have to be ready and somewhat educated if it does. Yeah, because it will be almost immediate. Whenever, to your point, whether the government shuts it down or they create their own.
Right. That's
happened quickly.
That's probably where it's going. It's just going to happen.
Quickly. That's right.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You have a big event coming up at the end of the year.
We do.
The New Year's party. Everybody knows about it.
Yep.
You gotta. It's how. Where did that come from? How did it?
This
start?
thing is awesome.
Yeah,
by the way. I mean,
it's a really cool event.
It kind of came. Well, it's called Bank of Utica New Year's Eve, presented with the City of Utica and its public safety departments.
That's a long title.
Yeah.
Is there an acronym we can work on that?
Brad, write that all down. What do we got here?
We started in 2019, and it's kind of the culmination of our building project. So when we built our building, the smaller building, we had to take all the way down, and then we ended up building it all the way back up to match the height of the bigger building, which is where the tellers are. And then we decided to put a tower on top of the building. The reason for that was in Utica's history, right adjacent to us, not where the tower is, but just adjacent to us to the north, City Hall was there. They had a very well-known Italianate tower that was designed by Upjohn, if I have the architect properly named. And our architect, Bob Hines, kind of suggested this. He's like, look, we should put a clock tower back in this part of the city because there was one here historically. And we even had a drawing of the old Italianate, but it just didn't really match our more modern-looking building, so we ended up going with a more modern-looking clock tower. So when that was going on, my dad and I had an idea, and kind of jointly along with Mayor Palmieri, and the mayor was stoning us for a long time, saying, "You've got to get this New Year's Eve party going," And it was really, I would say, Bank obviously had the idea, but the mayor really put his weight behind it and like pushed, me and my dad and me, and he said, "Yeah, this is something we got to do." So it started in 2019. The building was finished. We said we're going to do this, and it's really, it's a joint party between the bank and the city. And one thing I'm really proud of, I've never done Times Square New Year's Eve, but when you get there, apparently you got to get there, and you're cordoned off. You can't leave and go to the bathroom. It's hard to get. You can't get a drink. You're an adult diaper, which who wants to be in one of those?
This just sounds terrible. I agree.
But here, our party is, we block off 2 city blocks, a little bit more than 2, and you can come and go as you please. So we market it as a downtown-wide party, so you can leave. There's no entry. There's no ticket. We just have to check your bags and make sure you're not bringing in dangerous items. Yep. So you come and go as you please. So in the footprint, we have a few restaurants. Right on our block there, we've got Griffin's, who's been a great partner for a long time. Linda Irwin. Irwin's is a great restaurant. Mellows has not been open. Maybe they'll open this year. I'm missing somebody there. Jeff, what's Jeff's name? Golden's. Yeah, Golden's, right.
What a save.
Morgan, come on.
There's a couple, and then the Radisson, or I'm sorry, the Delta is right there. The Delta is right there in the footprint.
Yep.
So these people are within the footprint. You can walk. Modus. Modus is one of my favorite restaurants in Utica. It's a wonderful high-end restaurant. They're right there also. So you can get a drink. You can get some food right there. But then you can just walk right out 4 directions, north, south, east, west. And you can walk down the street. It used to be Bella Regina, but they moved. Fort Scott Club's down there. All of Bank Place is kind of closed down right now, as is most of. Let's not focus on that part. Ocean Blue. You can walk to Ocean Blue. Just get a drink right there. Go warm up. You can go to Pizza Classic. You can go to any of these places that are walking distance, even up the street to Nostro or Ancora. There's a bunch of restaurants I'm not remembering right now. But you can walk, warm up, come back. Swifties, right? Get a drink, come back, and we have beer there. The exclusive beer partner is Saranac, who we're very, very close to, and they're. I drink a lot of Saranac, kind of like I promote the Sentinel, I promote the Saranac just as well.
What a guy. Yeah. This guy's the best. I mean,
dedicated.
Barry James.
We wouldn't want Bud Light there, for example. We need to have our local, the people who are doing stuff for the community here, which is Saranac, of course.
You know, Magician with the kids version of it. That was really cool.
Leon
My
Etienne has
kids
been there the last
loved
few years.
it.
He'll be back in this year.
Great. He does an awesome job.
We've got great bands. Historically, we always have 3 bands. This year, we may go to 2 bands. The band that's been there every single year. We like to change things up, where we have like some consistency, but then maybe 2/3 of the show is all different. This year, though, that second Ladies of Soul has been there every year. They're the only band that's been coming back. They may not make it this year. That's what I heard. So we may have 2 bands this year. Soul Injection will be headlining, and another great band, Simple Props, who's well known in the area. They're going to be kicking it off. So those 2 bands are going to be holding it down, I think. There's a whole bunch of intermission acts. We bring in some local talent. We've got some dancers coming. I think the Butler.
Is it dancer in the window?
Yes.
Back?
That's the aerialists, we call them.
Oh, excuse me. Aerialists?
Yeah, let's keep it clean over there.
My dad loves the aerialists. So they're going to be back this year. So, but we got some good dance groups like Butler Sheehan is coming. They're an Irish dance group with the kids. They're really great. Last year we had Utica Royalties, which is kind of an African children's dance group that are excellent. We brought in some comedians. We bring in like the Comets, UCFC. We bring in a whole bunch of kind of intermission acts where we can kind of talk with people and have a good time there. So it's a wonderful party, and I encourage everybody to come down. So.
No, is there? You mentioned it's just security. Again, there's no tickets or anything. You just kind of walk in and enjoy the play. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're with Wechat Security, and of course, it's presented with the City of Utica and its public safety departments. So both the police and the fire play an absolute integral role. And this party is to honor the police and the fire. That's what we've been doing for each year, and all the public safety departments. So what we've had the last couple of years is a chili cook-off between the police and the fire. The first year, the fire department won. And the second year, the police department won. So this is the 3rd year in a row.
Yeah, gotta get
this
that
is
lead.
for real bragging rights here.
Wow.
We're going to see who's going to win. So the judge are the participants, the people who go. There's little cups of chili. The police and the fire both prepare, and then you vote for your favorite chili. And we'll see who's got full bragging rights at the end of this year.
Oh, that's fun.
Mm-hmm. It's a great time.
Yeah.
I brought the whole family down last year. We had a riot. It was great. And the horse carriage rides, that was great. That was fun.
This year we're going to have some fire dancers. We're going to have the Ice Farm is a group they're from upstate New York. I'm not sure where, but we're going to have like an ice skee ball. We're going to have an ice throne that you can take pictures in. A few other ice sculptures. There's going to be some ice carving demonstrations. The aerialists are coming back. The horse and carriage will be back again this year. I'm sure I'm missing a couple items of entertainment. The Utica Children's Museum is there. The beer is poured by United Way. They're a great partner. They have their volunteers, as they do in Saranac. For Saranac Thursday, for years, the United Way volunteers would pour the beer, and they're going to be doing that again this year. So it's a whole community-wide event. Lots of people are involved, and I love it. The great thing about it, though, is one thing we're doing is the inauguration. So the Common Council and the mayoral inauguration will happen kind of to kick the party off in the beginning. They all take their offices on January 1st, but we kind of do the inauguration the few hours before the 1st. Lost my train of thought. Whatever.
No, I mean
One more point I was going to make, but it just slipped my mind.
no, that's fine. I mean, great event, and I was just to kind of wrap things up here a little bit and keep us on schedule. I want to give you the floor. You know, Bank of Utica, local bank, you're the head of it. You know, what's the pitch for anybody listening to work with you guys? I mean, we covered a lot of it, but just want to give you the floor.
Thank you. So Bank of Utica, we've been here a long time. Our employees, we got about 45 or 50 employees, and we have, I think, 15 people who are in their 60s right now. We have so much experience there, and we really just love kind of sitting down with you and getting to know you. And we're not just isolated to Utica. As I said earlier in the show here, you know, my dad and my grandfather did their part to kind of bring Utica and Rome together and always try to build that bridge. And I kind of feel the same way. I've been spending a lot of time in Rome, actually, the last, year or two. Just down the street here is that disc golf park, the Bomber Disc Golf. I never really did disc golf, but I got a couple buddies of mine that I grew up with. They love disc golf, so we've been going on a trip once a year for one day. I'm going to Pennsylvania actually in a couple days here. And this Bomber Disc Golf is one of the best courses I've ever been. I've only been on like 6 or 7 courses, but it's just amazing. So we'll come to like downtown Rome. We'll go to like, we know the Capitol Theater a little bit in Art Pierce, and there's just good things going on there. There's a couple cafes, of course, right there, Cappuccinos, which I just read in your papers, moving. I guess.
Yeah, they just moved
It's
a couple blocks down.
They moved already.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep.
There's another cafe. I can't think of the name. It's right next. If you're facing the Capitol Theater, it's right
To the right.
yeah, I forgot the name of that one.
What was it?
Not Franca's. No, it's
No.
It's your facing Capitol Theater. It's on the
Yeah,
right.
we just covered this with Adam Hovack.
They're very arty. Like they got a bunch of.
Oh wow.
It's got a funky name.
Unofficial or something.
Superficial.
That's it.
Superficial.
That sounds
What is it?
Superficial.
My wife lost.
You doing the Google?
Yeah, we need it. More.
My wife lost a hat there, and she's an artist, so they ended up keeping the hat. And they looked at her labels like Prunks. They called her. So I was in Utica. It was so cool of them. They kept the hat there. Put it actually in their display box because there's a bunch of artists that have displays there. But bottom line is we go there, then I take the kids to the Bomber Disc Golf. So, we appreciate kind of spending time in Rome. So my point is that, we're not limited to just, Utica or just like the adjacent communities of Utica. To me, we're a Mohawk Valley bank. There are very few kind of like Mohawk Valley. There's a couple out there which they're good banks. Whenever I hear somebody's banking with one of our competitors, a local bank, let's just say, okay, Adirondack. Well, good. You're with a local bank. If they're with Bank of America, I'm like, give me a break. Be with us or at least be with Adirondack. Don't be with like Bank of America, You guys aren't with Bank of America, are you?
No.
Wouldn't even think of it, Barry James.
Right.
No, we're with MBT, which is kind of like just
Yeah,
between,
they're quasi-local,
quasi-local,
so, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Quasi-
Well, they're New York State. If you're with, NBT, be with M&T. Don't be with KeyBank because KeyBank's Ohio. Whatever. That may or not make the show. So, but M&T's at least based in
Work
New York
local,
State,
damn it.
so-
That's all we're trying to say.
Yeah, be local. Support New York State at least.
Absolutely.
But the point is that no, we really feel we're a Mohawk Valley bank and we do business in Oneida County. Herkimer County, so all these different places. So, and we love kind of talking to people, and we love visiting people. We're happy to kind of come out and see what people are doing here, businesses. And
Yeah, I think the thing is like even if it's a 20-minute drive, it'll be well worth it. You'll get to learn a lot. You won't be bullshitted. What's out there. You're gonna get that white glove experience and personal experience. I think with Bank of Utica or Adirondack Bank, at least the local, as you mentioned, it's just a nice touch. And I really appreciate you taking the time with us, and hopefully we continue the conversations. Maybe another lunch someday in the future. But
you guys are on the list. I'm sure my dad's got you guys circled for.
I can only hope. But cheers and
thank you.
Thanks for
Thanks
coming
very
on
much
board.
for having me. Really appreciate the time.
I got one last sip.
One little sip to make it happen. Hey, yo.
All right.
We got it.
Thanks again, Barry.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.